They have arrived. F-16s have arrived in Ukraine according to media reports, and there's even a video supposedly already showing one of them over the skies of Ukraine. We'll talk about this as well as about the developments along the front lines, international aid, troop generations, and much more in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Hello and welcome. We'll start off with some Ukrainian strikes. Ukrainians have struck targets in Oryol, Voronezh and Belgorod. The strikes seem to have aimed at the electricity infrastructure and have caused some damage, even though I do not have exact details. Also, they hit an oil depot in Voshi. On the northern front line, I cannot confirm any change in territory. It seems to have been more or less stable. And on the eastern front here, north of the Seversky Donetsk, it is the exact same. Nothing has changed here over the last 2 days. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have Ukrainians admitting the loss of roughly this territory here. And they admit that they lost this territory north of Rostolivka. I still have no real confirmation what happened with Ivano-Dobrivka, but now we see the pro-Ukrainian deep state map showing at least this area as being contested. Basically, no side has permanent presence, and the area is going up to Ivano-Dobrivka, which would at least be some admittance on their side that there was some movement in this direction, but overall the front line is still somewhat unclear. West of it, in the area of Chasiv Yar, we have Russian mill bloggers claiming that they have crossed the canal and gained a foothold in the houses on the other side of the canal. And while we cannot confirm that they have gained a foothold in the houses, we have a geolocation west of the canal, quite barely west of the canal, but in fact west of the canal in the upper northwest. So roughly here the Russians have crossed the canal. No, it's unclear as of this moment how far or if they managed to enter the houses further west. Further south, the Ukrainians have lost additional territory in the area of Pivnichne and Salisne. Here the Ukrainians more or less admitted the loss of roughly this area over the last few days, including this area here where we had visual evidence of counterattacks. This is what the Ukrainians have admitted. I have very fresh geolocations showing even more. We see a geolocation here north of the main road, and we see another one to the west. And on this map, this is actually at this point here and at this point here. So the Russians have by now entered here and have reached this. Salisne should be the center of it, is definitely conquered. As of now, there should no more be Ukrainian presence. They have reached this point and they have entered the western settlement, the western part of Salisne, which is threatening to cut off the Ukrainian troops all over here if the Russians keep advancing in New York. From New York, there is a claim that the Russians have advanced up to here. I have yet to see any visual evidence, so as of now this is unchanged, at least from what I see. West of it, in the Avdiivka area, more or less in the Pokrovsk axis of attack, the Russians managed to advance west of Losuvatske. Here they have reached the town of Timofivka. Here, this here fell into the Russian hands over the last 2 days, and the Russians managed to straighten the front line roughly here, take 3 tree lines, taking this area now as well. But that was it for now. From what I've seen in the Avdiivka area, we switch further south, and here the Ukrainians admit now that basically Krasnohorivka has fallen. I have a geolocation of this as well, showing the Russians in the uppermost northwest house. So the Russians are here now. I guess we can say that at least everything south of the river here should be in Russian hands as of now. Technically, we could argue that maybe this is still a part of Krasnohorivka. To be honest, I have no clue, but the main agglomeration of the town itself is in Russian hands by now. Further south, the Russians have advanced a little bit southwest of Pobieda. They've reached the tree line here. So roughly at this point, They have reached by now. We have a geolocation of this as well. Here you can see it. The Russians, here's the small settlement of Pobjeda, and the Russians have reached this point here. The Russians continued mechanized attacks on Konstantinivka. Here they did another bigger another bigger mechanized attack, and this time they were able to enter the town. The Ukrainians have destroyed 37 armored vehicles in the area just between Novomikhailivka and Konstantinivka. In this field alone, 37 wrecks have been visually identified, 11 of them MBTs, but despite this high cost and of course an accordingly high loss in human lives, the Russians have still managed to enter the southeastern part of Konstantinivka, and the battle for it has started. This will obviously threaten the eastern line of communication towards Vuhledar, but as I showed you in the last situation report, the Russians are here now, and the deep state map is showing it already, meaning that they are a mere kilometer and a half away from the road now, which is getting increasingly unusable. To the west of it, we have a small change. We have a geolocation that the Russians have taken the area east of Uroshaine. This is geolocated, so roughly this area now has fallen into Russian hands as well. The geolocation is here, so the map is not exactly correct. The real front line should be roughly at this point at the very least by now, so a little bit further north than we see here. That's every change I have here, and to the west in Robotine, we see the Russians advancing further north of Robotine. Here we have a geolocation. You see Robotine here, and this is up here by now. So at this point, the Russians are now the front line. We've had them lately here, so we should expect that the front line is at the very least like this as of now. That was it in change in front lines. We have news from other parts, or overall news. The Russians have admitted they lost an Mi-8. That's the transport helicopter. A version of it, which is well known outside of Russia, is the Mi-17, which is very similar. And they've lost an Mi-8 in Donetsk. And the reports now is that it might have been hit with an FPV drone by the Ukrainians. So this might be the first confirmed air-to-air kill with FPV drones on a manned flying object. And we have Bloomberg saying Ukraine gets first delivery of F-16s after long wait. According to it was according to Bloomberg, the F-16 is now finally in Ukraine, and there's a video here supposedly showing it. This is showing clearly an F-16, but obviously at the same time it might be a picture from who knows where. It's camouflaged. We see a blur of the surroundings, which Ukraine likes to do by now, but this can still be done on another video just to fool us. The plane itself is not identifiable with which nation it is from. The F-16, as I said in the past, is not going to be a game changer. Especially not in the numbers they are being given, especially not in the model type they are given. They are not getting the most modern F-16V. They are getting AB versions that have been slightly modernized, and they will lack the whole train of assistance that Western F-16s enjoy, like tanker planes, like AWACS and so on. Even the two Swedish delivered AWACS type planes will help a lot, but they will not be fully making up for it, and at the same time they'll be massively threatened on the ground, as obviously the Russians will try to destroy them on the ground, and they have weapons that can reach them all over Ukraine. So F-16s will not be a game changer. They will not win the war for Ukraine, but they will allow Ukraine to do everything a little better than they can do by now, as for instance the F-16s can finally carry active radar homing missiles, which the Ukrainians so far lack, meaning the Ukrainian F-16s will be able to shoot at a flying object and then turn away because the missile keeps going on itself, keeps the targets in its sight, whereas right now the Ukrainians only have semi-active radar homing, meaning the Ukrainian plane has to keep flying towards the target to light it up with its own radar so the missile can find it, obviously reducing the flexibility, not allowing evasive maneuvers, and so much more. So there the F-16s will help. They will also be supplied from the US with HARM anti-radiation missiles, with extended range JDAMs, with AIM-120 MRAM and AIM-9 Sidewinder, the medium and short range air-to-air missiles. All of this will probably be better than most of what Ukraine has so far. But they will not be a game changer, especially in small numbers, especially without the whole train. We should not have hopes here that this will change everything, but it's still an improvement and a needed improvement towards Ukraine. And obviously the step has now been gone, been walked. Now Western fighter jets have arrived in Ukraine. Now Western fighter jets are fighting in Ukraine's armed forces. So the barrier has been breached. Additional deliveries are possible in the future, and maybe some other presidency might even hand over F-16s from US inventory as well, but we'll have to see for that. Then we'll have some news about sabotage. Ukrainian agents have struck Russian targets in Syria. It seems like with the aid of Syrian local agents, we have Riba here, the big pro-Russian mill blogger, and they are actually confirming it. They said initially, like, Ukraine loves to do some false stuff, like it's a pro-Russian mill blogger close to the government, but they admit that it's authentic, and they were even able to identify a target that is visible on the Ukrainian strikes that has before been reported destroyed. So we see another country where Ukrainian agents are active. Now we have them in Mali, we have them in Sudan, and we have them in Syria. So far, Ukraine's GUR is clearly intending to strike the Russians wherever they can outside of Ukraine as well. Then we have a picture that was taken by a Ukrainian surveillance drone. You see the 3 wheels here and something on top, and this has been identified as most likely a Bullseye 4 or Bullseye 4, which is a North Korean anti-tank vehicle. As you can see, it carries 8 ATGMs, and those are NLOS, non-line of sight. The range of it is pure speculation, but it's estimated between 10 and 25 kilometers. So it seems like the Russian armed forces have now received ground vehicles from the North Korean government as well. There was also, in conjunction with that, a report that North Korea started increasing its production of anti-tank missiles. This would be a good explanation for it. If they are selling them, then they need to replace them, and then Russia will probably want to buy more. Then we have news from more oblasts in Russia that they have started I call it affiliate payments. Basically, if one is signing up and brings a friend, he's getting some extra money, and the boni are starting at 5,000 rubles up to 100,000 rubles, and in total 9 oblasts are already participating. All of it a sign that it's getting increasingly difficult for Russia to recruit enough manpower, even though we have to say they are still capable of recruiting enough, but they have to pay increasingly more. Then there's another sign which could be interpreted in this way. The fighter bomber, the big Russian mill blogger, is publishing a video about a motorized rifle regiment that is created of Air Force personnel. And the mentioning here is kind of weird because it says that there are specialists in it. That usually doesn't make sense. You don't send somebody who has several years of special training to use as a general grunt, as an infantryman, unless the situation is so dire that you need everyone who can hold a rifle. But the Russians have still seemingly made that decision, and we have to say fighter bomber is pro-Russian. That's not some Ukrainian spreading false informations. Fighter bomber has spread some false informations, but often enough he's been honest enough to admit own defeats and things like that, own lost planes. That's a fairly trustworthy is too big a word, but it's not a fake news spreader in the Russian infosphere. He's saying that there are mechanics, radio operators, engine and brake engineers, warrant officers, and even one is a navigator, which would then be a crew, aircraft crew. Aircraft crew together with maintenance personnel used as infantry doesn't make any sense unless you run out of men. So what's the point here? I don't really get, because at the same time, while we see it's getting more difficult for Russia to recruit men, they shouldn't be at that point right now that they have to send in flight personnel as cannon fodder. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. Maybe the situation is worse than expected for the Russians, but on the other hand, the GUR just recently said again that the Russians probably keep recruiting 30,000 men a month. That wouldn't justify using them. So a full explanation isn't really possible at this point. Then we have news from the United States. 200 million US dollars presidential drawdown have been decided for Ukraine, with an additional 1.5 billion US aid for in context of the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. The delivery will include NASAMS ammunition, so air defense missiles, RIM-7, that's the Sea Sparrow. They have been retrofitted for Buk and Kub launchers, the so-called Frankensam, meaning the Ukrainians ran out of air defense missiles on smaller medium-range air defense systems that are self-propelled, but they found a way to rig RIM-7 on top of them, and there are fresh ones being delivered towards Ukraine. Ukraine will also receive HIMARS ammunition. No idea whether it's ATACMS or GMLRS, probably mostly GMLRS, but no further details here. They are also getting ATGMs of various kinds, TOW, they are getting Javelin and AT4s. And they are receiving artillery shells, 155, 105, and mortar shells as well. The Czech Republic is saying at the end of the year they will have delivered 500,000 rounds of 155. So the Czech initiative to get artillery ammunition for Ukraine has finally taken off. Finally, the first ammunition has arrived, and the Czechs the Czech Republic is confident that they'll be able to deliver at least 500,000 out of this source alone, helping again with Ukraine's artillery shortage. And they already started their mission for 2025 because they want to continue it there at the same time as well. And from the United Kingdom, there is another 176 million pounds in military aid. I have not seen the details what's included there, but 2 additional Leopard 2A4s are in their final tests before being delivered to Ukraine. They have been financed, from what I've seen, from the Dutch and the Danish, but definitely from the Dutch. So 2 more Leopard 2A4s are coming, and more are in the pipeline. Most of those Leopard 2A4s are from stocks that have been had been treated negligently, so they have to be refurbished massively, but there's a couple more on the horizon for Ukraine. But that was it from me already for today. If you like the situation reports, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section. And have you seen the video I made yesterday about Venezuela? Let me know if you like this. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.